Hello, everybody, and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Today, we're going to be reviewing and discussing the movie The Ring 2, the American version, which came out in 2005. Hopefully, you guys have been keeping up with the channel, or if you're finding me for the first time, we are doing this random review series because one of the goals of me starting this channel is to just branch out and try to experience more films. And one of the goals I have for myself this year is just to branch out and experience more foreign films specifically. So I thought this franchise would be kind of a fun deep dive into because it has their American version but also has their original Japanese version. So I have already covered the first 3 Japanese films, so feel free to check those out. We are on the second part of our American journey here, followed by Rings, so hopefully that video is dropping pretty soon here. And then after that, we're going to be doing some fun comparison videos, a fun ranking video. So if you like horror, if you like the Ring franchise and need somebody to talk to about it, you finally found the right place here because we are about to start discussing The Ring 2. With that said, let's jump into the review section, starting with the positives or just the things that I enjoyed most about this movie. And kind of like how I praise the second Japanese movie, I do like how in this American sequel, the movie directly continues the story with our characters of Rachel and Aidan, instead of switching it into completely new characters or following kind of side characters of the original film. And I think overall, it is just a much better approach than the Japanese sequel because we're not just watching somebody else, like I said, a random side character, just rediscover and re-experience all of the same information that we already know. We're actually following the aftermath and following the characters that are now experiencing that aftermath in this film. So not only does it stress the importance of continuity that I really enjoy in franchise films, but it also just does something a little bit different, which I also really appreciate. And continuing on praising the nice new directions this film decides to take, I really like the idea that Rachel and Aidan here move to a new state and move to a new town. And then we find out that the curse through Samara and the videotape is actually starting to follow them. It is literally following them to a different location. It kind of, to me, makes the tape and the curse of Samara feel less like one contained event and more like something that is just constantly spreading and infecting wherever these characters are going to. And I think it is a nice touch, especially with following this family, with following Rachel and her son, especially because Rachel is the one who uncovered everything, freed Samara, and now Samara is following them. So again, it does something a little bit different, but it also makes a lot of sense based off the original film. And I think that concept alone helps to expand this curse's lore a little bit better than the original Japanese films, and in a way that feels maybe a little bit more natural and connected overall. Unfortunately, though, there are not too many standout sequences, but at least there is one here that really and genuinely stood out to me. I really enjoy that bathtub scene with Aidan. This scene takes place around, I want to say, like halfway through the movie, and Aidan is just starting to really deal with the curse of Samara. His body temperature is dropping rapidly, and his mom decides to give him a hot bath to try and raise his body temperature. She leaves the room, leaves the house, and then their co-worker, Rachel's co-worker guy that was kind of a love interest but never really went that way. Either way, it's his house, and all of a sudden he he sees the door shut and then lock while Aidan is still in the bathtub. And then all of a sudden, just a bunch of water starts funneling through the bottom of the door, and you're imagining that Samara's there. She is always around and really connected to water within this whole franchise. Rachel gets back to the home, busts through the door, and then we get this cool scene of all the water from the bathtub almost ignoring the rules of gravity, levitating above the room and Aidan in the bathtub. And we get this creepy, eerie scene of Samara's hands almost wrapped around Aidan as he is in the bathtub. And to me, it kind of created this surreal, almost sci-fi horror, really intense kind of edge that I wish this movie had a little bit more of. And I also like the added twist of this curse and then also Samara kind of blurring the lines between reality and what is actually this curse kind of messing with. When Rachel goes into the bathroom to try and save Aidan, for a brief moment, Aidan kind of switches to Samara and Rachel just kind of acts instinctively and tries to drown her. And it's really just Samara manipulating, obviously, her perception. And she's in the middle of almost drowning her son as her coworker is walking in. So it creates this kind of complex relationship where you get this outside guy that has no idea what's going on. So I couldn't imagine being that guy and then going to work the next day with Rachel being like, didn't I just see you almost drown your son in my bathtub? But he doesn't have the context. We have the context, but it still puts Rachel in that scary, uneasy kind of scene because I just couldn't imagine me being in Rachel's shoes like that. And I just love scenes like this that, again, just kind of blur the line between reality and the curse. And it feels a little bit more like an evolution of what the tapes could do without introducing all of that cheesy nonsense that some of the characters have this psychic, supernatural ability in it of themselves. So I like scenes like that. I really enjoyed that scene, and unfortunately, even though this is in my positives, really wish the movie had more things going for it like that, because with that said, let's jump over to my mixed aspects I have for this movie. And like I was just kind of hinting at, I do think this movie does a much better job with the son character. In this movie, it is Aidan, but compared to the Ring 2 Japanese version, I think Aidan is treated much better here in my opinion. Instead of giving him these sudden over-the-top psychic powers, the movie kind of takes its time with making it more about Samara trying to literally inhibit him, almost like a possession or cursed infection. I think it is much more grounded and a fitting direction for this story. And I like the cool little idea that instead of Aidan having these kind of just random psychic visions, he can kind of give Rachel the visions and clues she needs while he's asleep, and he touches her hand. He gives her this almost tape-like clue scavenger hunt through dreams and visions when he is already cursed and asleep. It is a really cool concept. It's slightly more believable that I just kind of bought into, but unfortunately, again, it's where the execution causes this to really fall apart. I think the biggest issue with this movie, and unfortunately with a lot of these movies in the Ring franchise, is it rushes the mystery way too quickly and almost kind of blows its load halfway through the story here. Rachel just at one point suddenly comes to the conclusion that Samara is trying to take over Aidan's body, and it honestly comes out of nowhere. There is no buildup or discovery, just we get a random scene of Rachel announcing this to the audience, to herself, and to the other characters. And I could forgive that, but once that information is kind of revealed, the mystery aspect of the movie just kind of disappears, because I'm like, oh, okay, that's Samara's end goal. We really just kind of figured that out halfway through the movie. That doesn't make a lot of sense, and it didn't come very naturally. That feels really, really rushed. And instead of uncovering things step by step, Aidan basically just gives Rachel everything through one big vision moment. I kind of would have liked to see Aidan having these powers due to the possession and infection kind of slowly show themselves to Rachel, whether it is him talking in his sleep, giving her visions, maybe flashes on the TV, something slowly throughout the movie, so we feel like we're kind of getting slow bits and pieces revealed to us throughout the movie. But in this time, they just kind of give Rachel literally everything the first time it really happened. So again, it's not a bad idea, but at the same time, it really removes a lot of that tension and investigative side that made the first original Japanese movie work really well for the most part. And even with Aidan's new visions that he kind of gives Rachel, which now that I'm talking about it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense when you start to think about it, because it's like if Samara is really infecting and possessing Aidan, why on earth would she allow that? Why is she allowing through the possession to funnel information that she has to Aidan and then to Rachel? Doesn't make a lot of sense. And unfortunately, when Rachel gets all this information, it kind of makes the story beats feel slightly repetitive or new, but from the same angle, if that makes sense. For example, when Rachel tracks down through the vision and clues Samara's biological mother, it is framed as new information, but it's essentially the same story that we've gotten before in the original Japanese and now American one too. We find out that Samara has been this evil person or this negative influence on the people in her lives, now including her biological mother here, where we find out her bio mom was driven insane because of Samara. They couldn't control her, and then they tried to kill her. So that is the exact same backstory her adoptive parents had in the original. So it's not really new. It's just delivered through new characters. So instead of expanding the lore, it just feels like we're hearing the same story again from a slightly new perspective. But with that said, let's jump over to my negatives, or the things that I just didn't like about this movie. And kind of jumping back to the beginning of this movie, this opening scene is honestly one of the, if not the worst parts of this movie, and one of just the worst scenes I've seen in a very long time. It's not just awkward, it completely breaks a lot of the logic and intensity this franchise has created. We follow this random high school couple where we follow this guy trying to convince this random girl to watch the curse tape, so we know that he's just trying to pass the curse along. But the way that he does it makes no sense, and it's just kind of laughable. He sits her down and starts telling her that this is the scariest thing he has ever seen, the most unsettling thing he has ever seen in his entire life, which is obviously going to make somebody not want to watch it. So I have no idea why he's pitching it like that. Like, I love horror and scary movies, but my buddy sat me down and had this unmarked tape telling me it's the most unsettling shit he's ever seen. I just picture him showing me a real life torture video, and I'm not gonna watch it. I wouldn't watch it. So it makes no sense, because if this dude is trying to save his life, why wouldn't you kind of just trick her into watching it? You've already thrown out your morals passing this curse off to somebody, so why not just go full-fledged with it and trick her into watching it? And on top of that, he is literally doing it 2 minutes 2 minutes before he's about to die. He's like panicking, looking at the clock on his wall, being like, holy shit, I only have 2 fucking minutes left. And the tape's about 2 minutes long, and he's like screaming at her from the kitchen to watch the tape. I'm like, buddy, you had an entire week and you're literally doing this the last second. It's like the movie is just trying to create this false sense of intensity, like a ticking time element, but that ticking time element makes no logical sense as to why any single person on this earth would ever do something like this. And like I was just talking about, he leaves the room while the tape is playing or yelling at her to watch it, which again really makes no sense because past movies have shown that if you're making a copy and show somebody that copy, you can kind of be there with them. So it doesn't make a lot of sense because he could have just had it playing, sat her down, made her watch it. And from other Ring movies, we kind of have it implied that they don't need to watch the whole thing. They just kind of need their eyes open for a little bit. So it's like this dude made this big problem an even bigger problem, and even bigger for the movie. As soon as I saw that opening, it just immediately tells me this movie's not going to follow its own rules. It's kind of cheesy. It's kind of silly, well, not being campy fun. And on top of that, his death scene is honestly ridiculous. Him blending into the VHS curse tape footage like some low-level green screen effect mixed with Windows Movie Maker just completely kills any tension and just makes me realize I'm not watching a serious movie at this point in time. It feels like the movie at that point also just forgot what made The Ring so effective, which is its atmosphere, which is even frustrating because I believe this director directed the first two original Ring movies. The second one, definitely a huge mixed bag, but that first one is iconic and, for the most part for myself, pretty incredible. So just to see this steep decline is honestly kind of depressing. On top of that, this movie, again, just gets rid of the atmosphere, which I have a lot of problems with a lot of these sequels so far, and it just kind of relies on Samara just appearing, maybe every once in a while jumping out at the camera over and over again, and because of that, you really lose what made The Ring scary, or the idea of Samara scary in the first place. The more you see her, the less effective she becomes. Plain and simple, and this movie throws that out the window. There's also scenes that feel completely random and feel like they don't add anything. For example, that deer attack scene is a wonderful example of what I was just saying. It is visually kind of cool, but it doesn't make any sense in the story, and it comes off more chaotic, cheap with the CGI, and just stupid rather than creepy. It just kind of feels like the movie is just trying to throw out ideas, see what sticks. Maybe they had an idea of Samara kind of infecting the environment, but they really only have one scene of that, so that didn't make a lot of sense. Like, she's controlling nature and animals out of nowhere, so the logic just kind of starts to feel a little flimsy, and I'm like, okay, what are her limitations here? Can she really control like everything now that she's not cursed? If so, then why does she even need to infect Aidan in the first place? She could literally do it to anybody, especially someone that doesn't know what is happening here if she has that much power. Why do it to a family that knows what's happening and is going to try to stop you? It makes no sense. And Aidan, again, in the beginning, having these visions, which again, I think is cool because he's getting infected and cursed, so it doesn't feel completely out of nowhere, but he clearly knows something is wrong, but anything until things get really bad and he almost dies. And it would make a lot more sense if that was in the first movie, but here, the second movie, after everything we've been through together, it just kind of feels like forced drama that has no place within these characters' relationship. And on top of that, it again makes their relationship feel like it hasn't grown at all, which is frustrating because it really does feel, even at the end of this movie, that the characters are in the literal same relationship and spot at the start of the first movie where they are at the end of the second movie. So that is just extremely frustrating here when there's so much character work that could really be happening, especially with that mother and son dynamic. There's also just random smaller moments that really break any reality or immersion or tension. These might be nitpicks, but for example, when Rachel at the end of the movie or the climax finds her coworker dead in the car, killed by Samara, that has now infected Aidan. She just leaves him in the car in the middle of the street, and then literally the next scene after that, she goes to bed, which is just crazy. We don't see her do anything with that guy, and it's just little moments like that are sprinkled throughout this movie that just show me the movie doesn't really care about its logic and makes it harder to stay really invested in this movie. And again, here, unfortunately, the ending just didn't really land for me. After all this buildup, the solution basically comes down to information we had almost halfway through this movie, where Rachel is now instructed to kill Aidan by drowning him, but it's a worthy sacrifice because it'll cause Samara to leave, I guess. And we get to a scene where she starts doing it, and then she really only drowns him for about 10 to 15 seconds before Samara's just kind of released. And I'm like, oh, that's it. That was what the big stressor was. That seemed pretty quick. I mean, why didn't she leave the first time you tried drowning him? That doesn't really make a lot of sense either. Just feels very anticlimactic. And then we get to a scene where Samara is now released a little bit, but she's still kind of free, and sucks Rachel into the TV and the cursed tape part of Samara's world, and it leads to a scene of Rachel climbing up the well and closing the well shut again. And then that's how the movie ends. So it's frustrating because I understand where the movie is coming thematically, the idea of a parent doing whatever it takes to save their child, but the execution feels forced, and then at the same time way too simple for how much this movie and the other movie really built this mystery up. It feels like the ending is this build up to a resolution that isn't satisfying or very impactful or really changes or expands a lot of the information we already knew before we sat down and watched this. So with that all said, I would say that overall, The Ring 2 is a very messy and often frustrating sequel that introduces some interesting ideas but loses the atmosphere, logic, and tension that made the first film so effective. So for my rating for this movie, a little difficult here because it's not like I hated myself watching it, just kind of talking it out loud with you lovely people, writing my notes for this video. I just kind of started to pick it apart, but when I was watching it, not terrible is what I'm kind of left with, which is not a high remark or selling point for this movie, unfortunately. So I feel like if you really like the first American one, want to see where things go, I feel like this is a fine movie to watch if it's on a streaming service that you're already paying for. But for myself, I really don't see myself ever rewatching this. I could just watch the original Japanese or the original American. In no way, shape, or form am I ever going to spend money on this movie again. Maybe if I'm going through the series with somebody, they want to watch this and it's like 99 cents to rent, I'm fine losing that dollar to experience a movie with somebody assuming. But yeah, that's about it here, guys. I kind of feel like kind of sad here, if I'm being honest, because I was so excited for this franchise. And, you know, we have two really good films and the rest of them just keep going down. I've heard nothing but awful things about Rings when it originally came out almost 9 or 10 years ago. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be more positive on that. I'm not too sure. But this franchise has unfortunately kind of lived up to its reputation. We'll see if I find a hidden gem with our last one here. But that's about it. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on the American The Ring 2 movie. Do you like it more than me? Do you agree with me? Are you the complete opposite of me? Let me know your thoughts and feelings here. I appreciate anybody watching my videos. Thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.